is a beautiful 75-degree day in Southern California. The crowd filing into the Forum in Inglewood.
Inside the Forum at the corner of Manchester and Prairie.
Whether you're kicked back in the lounge or grinding in the film room, the block is always hot for the Lakers.
The Los Angeles Lakers are the world champions of basketball.
It's the Great Western Forum.
Oh, chased down by James. Blocked by LeBron.
The Magic, he pivots, a 360 turn. He's around one, he's around two. Magic to Green underneath.
On the ball to Shaq, screen.
A windmill. They're going crazy at the Fabulous Forum.
Hosted by Anthony Irwin, Pete Zayas, and Jovan Buha.
It's showtime.
Welcome, everybody, to the Great Western Forum. I'm Anthony Irwin, your de facto host. I'm not going to spend too much time on the mic because of the people that I am doing this show with. This is our first episode together, so pardon the bumps and the dust and everything as we get through this. But I'm really excited about this. From my left to right, joined by Jovan Buha of Buha's Block. We are also joined by Pete Zayas of Laker Film Room. Jovan, Pete, I wanted to thank you, honestly. That's kind of what I wanted to start with. You guys entrusted me coming to Odyssey, following me on this project. And Jovan, I'll start with you. Thank you very much for entrusting me with that. I can't wait to get going on this project.
I'm excited, man. That intro got me pumped. We got the juices flowing. That was awesome. But thank you for guiding me over to Odyssey and your advice during this whole process with the podcast side of things. And now I've gone fully independent for the time being and living my best life.
Congratulations on that too, by the way. And Pete,
you.
as always, dude, you're one of my oldest friends in this industry, and it means so much to be able to get this going again with you, kind of riding shotgun with me as well.
Excited to do it, man. I have a lot of great memories at the Great Western Forum, and so that place had an electricity to it. What you were saying, Jovan, about the intro and like watching it for the first time as we go into the show, and just that old feeling, man. There was nothing like it. So looking forward to building out this whole concept with you, man.
So what we're going to do here, the essence of this project is essentially, a fully collaborative experience with all of your favorite Lakers creators. Now, obviously, the three of us are going to get together for each of these episodes, and we're going to kick every episode off with a discussion amongst ourselves. But then eventually we are going to open this up to everybody that you would hope to hear about some of these topics. The plan tonight is to welcome Harrison Fagan, who obviously I go way back with. We all go way back with, basically. He'll bring some of the levity coming off of a packed couple of days, I think is what we're looking forward to. And then Mike Garcia, who for my money is the best draft person out there. And we're going to talk about the draft, the couple of days of the draft, what the Lakers were able to get done in the second half of this day. But more importantly than any one player that the Lakers drafted, even 36 after a couple of trades to get there, was the momentous occasion that was the Lakers being sold. Genie Bus, the Bus family agreed to sell the team to Mark Walter and the Guggenheim ownership group that obviously has transformed the Los Angeles Dodgers. Pete, I actually kind of wanted to start with you here because you've been a fan for longer than Jovan and I have been. I wanted to just kind of place myself or ourselves in the room with you when you found that out. That was insane.
Yeah, I think it was a morning announcement. So it was one of those things, kind of crusty-eyed looking, what? This was something I didn't think would happen for 15 years, maybe, and it's one of those things that always could have happened, and you always hear the rumbling here and there, but the fact that it was happening this soon, it was similar to the Luka trade in that it's so foundationally almost disorienting. It's like everything that you know about the Lakers, like the Bus family ownership of the Lakers is older than I am. They took over in 79. I was born in 80, you know? And so that's all I've ever known as a Laker fan is the ownership of the Bus family. And so to sort of shake that up and have something new, man, it just changes everything.
It was a really nice way. That was the nicest way I could have possibly said that you're the oldest one here. So,
oh, I wear that proudly.
But no, you're absolutely right. Now you're right also about the rumblings, and this has been a bunch of conversations that I had heard had been going on between Jeannie and Mark Walter specifically over the last year, maybe year or two. But it's still like, I don't care how much background I have on it. It's still going to be shocking. Jovan, you also, I believe, grew up a Laker fan. You've been covering this team here for a few years. That, there's no way to see that notification on your phone and not be just dumbfounded.
I was recording a mailbag when it happened, and I immediately scrapped it. That lost footage will never be seen because that was just, I didn't think anything could top the Luka trade. Like just the shock and awe of that, and how important that was for the Lakers of getting this generational superstar, still not yet in his prime, arguably, and just what that is going to do for the next 5 to 10 years. But I think this is bigger. I think this is a bigger deal because this is the next 20, 30, 40 years of Lakers basketball, of the Lakers franchise. So again, I didn't think like February 1st/2nd will always be a 24-hour period that I remember from being at MSG, getting that notification right around midnight, and then just going into scramble mode of calling people, texting people, writing about it for The Athletic, going live. I pulled an all-nighter that night, then flew back to LA that next morning. I'll never forget that, but this was like right there with just, this is changing the trajectory of this franchise for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I think that's a big part, is the 1-2 punch of the Luka acquisition and laying the foundation for the post LeBron era in that fell swoop. But then I think you're absolutely right. It is a bigger deal that the Lakers are under new ownership and are going to modernize. And, one of the takes that I kind of saw is that, like, how much is this actually going to change? Is this, not even on an immediate case, because it is going to, the sale per their announcement the other day, it won't go through till the end of Q3, maybe the beginning of Q4. So I don't think we're going to see, the immediate injection of resources that we're going to see. But Pete, the part of it that really excited me was that you're going to have this franchise that isn't at a low point. I saw comparisons to the Clippers with Ballmer, or even the Dodgers when Mark Walter bought them, and how, like, it took time with those ownership groups to, Steve Ballmer still hasn't made a championship despite all of the resources that he's put into the Clippers. But to me, the difference is the Lakers were exceptional even while they left all that meat on the bone. That's to me what I kept coming away from that idea. Do you think that is what do you think of that analysis? What do you think of that possibility that the Lakers, who have been able to attract superstars, they have won all these championships, even while they've been kind of, for lack of a better phrase, mom and pop shop-ish, the idea that they can take all the strong points of that and potentially also inject into that this modern concept of a fully formed multi-billion-dollar organization?
Yeah, that's the part where we win as completely as we can win, is that, and part of what I'm excited about that's different than, say, Dallas, for example, where they have an ownership change, is that this has been a slow burn. Walter's been an owner for a few years. Jeannie has talked about the progression in the relationship. This isn't something that it's like this outsider just threw a bag at you and I was like, well, okay, this is your team now, I guess, and you work out some awkward deal. It's like, for one, I don't think Jeannie would ever pass the team on to somebody that she didn't think would preserve the value system that they have in place, and a lot of what's really good about the mom and pop shop that they have. And that I think that it's very easy to just overlook some things that the Lakers are legitimately good at, or just in the sake of throwing dirt on them, where I think if you synthesize that with some more resources and money and just a bit more, couple more big picture voices in the room. I brought up Stan Kasten as somebody to keep an eye on for out for if as somebody maybe the Lakers might hire. So that, yeah, man, it could be kind of the best of both worlds of kind of preserving a lot of what is already here and it makes the Lakers great and that Lakers family idea and adding some real heft behind it.
Jovan, do you think they can strike that balance?
I think it's going to be challenging, but it does seem like that's the plan moving forward with Jeannie staying as governor for the foreseeable future. Looks like at least a few years. I'm a little I'm interested to see how that dynamic ends up
what do you make
playing
of
out.
that? Kind of what's your read on all that?
I just think it's tough to have someone pay $5-ish billion, which is going to end up being the final it's $10 billion valuation, but in actual money, $5 billion, only $5 billion. For yeah, but like that to pay that much and then to let someone else run the show, like I just, that doesn't quite make sense to me. So I mean, I'm sure he's gonna have a big seat at the table and be more behind the scenes in terms of some of the things, and maybe it is more of an optics thing of she's going to be the one in the governor's meetings and she's going to be like the face of ownership, because we know sometimes like there'll be a celebrity or an athlete as like the face of an ownership group when in reality they own like a minority percentage, right? Like that's how these things work sometimes. But I just, it's going to be interesting to see like when, if, for example, they want to make some more dramatic changes to the front office in terms of going in a different direction at some point, or adding in a new voice ahead of some of the key front office figures. Like, how is that going to potentially sit with her? Right?
Yeah. This front office is almost known for being thin and known for running lean. It's
and they like that less than anyone.
Yeah.
Like if you think we don't like that, how do you think they feel about it?
Well, that's the part of this that I find fascinating, and the point of spending all of that money to then also just continue to allow Jeannie to hold the keys there. I just bought for Father's Day a $200 set of bucket golf, and I'm going first. Like I'm gonna set it up, and I just can't fathom a world in which I do all of the work to set up the 9 holes around my house. And then just be like, all right, everybody, y'all have fun. And that's a tiny little golf thing. Think of that with literal exponential more resources going into this. And I think the key factor here, Pete, is it's easy to be patient if things are going well. But if Stan Kasten, if Mark Walter, if all of the people who now are going to own the Lakers feel that opportunities are being missed, things are falling through the cracks, the organization isn't running at the level that the Dodgers currently operate at, that's where I think you'll start to see some of those friction cracks.
I agree with that, but I also think it's fair to say that if you've evaluated the current front office and saying they are operating lean under the resources of what other front offices have, in that evaluation, how about we give them like league average type of resources to work with, and then evaluate them based off of that as well. So I think both are fair.
Well, what's funny about that, Harrison and I always laugh. Some of the funniest headlines are from the Byron Scott era.
Oh man,
where
you don't even need to say anything else.
That's we've already come a long way, right? We've already come a long way.
Yeah. Well, the reason I use that as an example is because the Lakers were trying to modernize, and their analytics department was Mark Madsen with a calculator, with a graphic calculator.
Oh, by the way, the whole Lakers didn't have synergy thing, that's not true. Maybe they were one of the last teams in the league to have one. I had a synergy account. Some of the things that people
did they ever ask to borrow it?
No, it's not like that. Sure, is it one of those things are you sharing a Netflix account with a couple other people type of thing? Yeah, it might be a little bit like that, but it's not. And forgive my voice, I'm a little under the weather. But yeah, it's I feel like people can take that aspect a little bit of it too far. It's not like that.
Well, I enjoy the jokes. So
I know you do.
I've warned you. I warned you when you came on here. Like, I know I'm going to get you going at some point, and it turns out it's Byron Scott. Byron Scott is the thing that got you going. But the reason I use him as an example, Jovan, is because the Lakers were trying to modernize. They did have kind of a daily statistical rundown or a regular statistical rundown that Mark Madsen was handing to him and he was throwing in the trash.
Basic arithmetic.
It's like an
All right,
abacus,
this is plus and
protractor.
minus. Yeah. But like, if I guess what I'm really curious about and really fascinated by is what happens if TWG steps in and tries to inject all of these resources, and there is discomfort there with a previous regime that had never had that stuff before. Is there a potential such thing as too much information and information overload, do you think?
I mean, maybe, but I don't think they're close to being to that level. I don't think that's a concern for me. Like I think the more interesting thing to me is how does the current group kind of view some of the new changes and how they assimilate into that. And again, we talk about the insular nature of the front office and it also being such a small front office. And if they are expanding that out and you look at franchises like the Clippers or the Warriors or the Celtics, and I reference those three specifically because they're also in big markets, like they have much larger front offices and they have more voices at the table in terms of roster and drafting and scouting and all of that. So to go from being one of the smaller front offices in the league to being at least average, if not one of the bigger ones potentially down the road, like that is a notable change. And how the current people navigate that, I think, is going to be fascinating for me to observe and hopefully continue to report out.
Yeah, I think it's something that like the extra resources are going to be a huge benefit for the vast majority of those people. I think where the potential friction is a whole bunch of people have somebody or many other different people to impress than they had 2 weeks ago or whenever it was. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so there's a level of uncertainty of like, even if I am doing well at my job, like what Jovan said, this dude just paid $5 billion. Of course, just things are going to be different. And the hope is that they just add resources and it's like, oh, now there's 10 people to do this job that 6 people were doing before. How are the 6 people going to feel about that? Probably really good that not everybody, like I remember I got an intern the last year I was there, and that was just super helpful, and so just there are so many places around the organization where just a little bit of a helping hand could help a very talented person do their job a lot more effectively.
Yeah, that's, I think, a perfect segue into that point of, I don't want to paint it as like somebody's looking over everybody's shoulders now, or they feel like somebody is looking over their shoulder now while they're trying to do their job. But that is kind of the crux of the relationship now, right? When you have people, it's like when a principal sits in on a teacher's classroom, and she says, "Oh, please act like I'm not here." And the teacher's always like, "How? All my class is staring at you," and that's where, I'm really curious and really interested in this transaction window, this next season, to see who does start to show some of those friction points, who does, I think it's actually pretty good to see that there aren't any, knee-jerk moves to keep the job, right? I remember, Jovan, correct me if I'm wrong here, but at the time of the transition, or right before the transition from Jim Bus to Genie Bus, there was a real late stage push to trade for Boogie Cousins. And the thought was that they might save their jobs by making it to the playoffs by acquiring Boogie Cousins. But as history would tell, that would not have gone very well. I'm actually kind of happy to see the patience that has kind of remained even while this transition period is kind of going, and this observation period is still kind of going on.
Well, I also think it's worth noting that Rob Pelinka just got a contract extention.
It
and
helps.
He also just traded for Luka Doncic a few months ago. So I think Rob is safe, and like we'll see how the next year or two go, and maybe I think there will be eventually changes in the front office, but more so just bolstering it, adding more voices, and just strengthening it. But I think kind of been dancing around Pelinka, I feel like, with some of the things we've been saying, and if we're just addressing it, like I think for now he's pretty safe. He just got an extension. Also, it's worth noting, I think, that Mark Walter has been a part of this ownership group since 2021, so he has had a seat at the table. He hasn't had the primary seat, but he has been involved in some of the decision making to some level. So I think maybe this was already in the works around the time of Pelinka's extension. I don't have clarity of that, but he just got extended. So I think the plan moving forward is going to be Jeannie is going to be the forward facing governor and Rob is going to be the head decision maker. But how this transaction cycle goes, how next season goes, Luka extension is a big thing. I think it's a big factor within all this. Like, those will determine what changes are made in the future. But I think for the foreseeable, next year or maybe even two, I think Rob is pretty safe.
I think so too. I mean, the Luka thing, it's funny. I have my issues with the stuff that Rob has done on the margins and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, he made such a lopsided trade that his fellow executives would not vote for him for executive of the year. Like, it was like seen as too lopsided for them to vote for him for that. And that's kind of his job. So I think there's also that to keep in mind. Kind of advancing the conversation into what we've seen so far this offseason. And I think I can sense it in my mentions. There's some frustration, still don't have a center. Still don't have like the starting wing that maybe people might have hoped for. I'm not saying I have those frustrations. I'm saying I'm sensing.
How are we supposed to address it? Oh, with one of the trades that's
yeah. Like, just that's all I'm sensing. Look, Lakers fans expect things done yesterday, and I think through 6 total hours of NBA draft and countless Shams tweets and reports and stuff like that of things that might happen or in the works or anything like that. It is one of those things where, and there are such glaring holes on this roster that I think there is a little restlessness here. And you add to that the initial optimism of new ownership and the thinking that everything might change overnight, and incorrectly thinking that, to be clear. I'm looking at your face, Pete, while I'm talking about this, and I'm just like, I promise I'm gonna needle. I'm gonna.
This is why I don't record on camera. I've got a judgmental face, and now I wear glasses, so I do the whole fucking like peer over my glasses thing.
It really is like it's like I feel like I'm.
You got like 5 memes out of this already.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's not good.
With Pete's face.
I'm sending off my mom in the background. I've got.
I feel like a kid doing a book report while the teacher is like, you missed that detail. You missed that one there. But yeah, I guess what I'm trying to get at here is, the through line to everything that goes on here is going to be this sale. And that is going to lay the foundation for how the rest of this, I think, off season and upcoming season is kind of sort of going to be judged. People are expecting something different, even if it's unrealistic. And my question, Pete, is like, with this new sale, with additional resources, with more cooks in the kitchen and actual qualified cooks in the kitchen, like, where are you setting your expectations from the second day of the draft? I really like the Thiero pick. I think if you weren't going to get a center, that's exactly the archetype of player I was kind of hoping for. It's just a crazy athlete. So I like that pick, and I liked everything that went into getting him and the creativity to get him. That was good to see. Where from here on out are you setting your expectations for what you're hoping or thinking that you'll get from the Lakers from now until Summer League?
So, between now and Summer League, I'm hoping they can get one real starter. If they can get 2, they can get into contention. But you need that starting big. You need that starting kind of wing that can guard and play on both ends of the floor. And so I think that between now and then they can get one of those things done. If they can get both, I'd be thrilled. But that's sort of what my expectation is there. And then more broadly speaking, I view this as a year of transition where like you said, that sale's not going to go through, Anthony, until the third quarter, maybe even the beginning of the fourth. And that's going to be right in the middle, or as the season is starting, that some of the changes that would ideally be made would be less than ideal to implement in December or something like that. You know what I mean? It's something that you do want to have done at the beginning of the year. And so to me, this is a slow burn type of thing. Like, everything changed, but it's not going to be, you're not going to see all of it happen on the court overnight, right? But I think that this is all about evaluation, all about kind of seeing what you have, seeing where you need to go, seeing, like, one of the first things you do is you meet with all the department heads and see what resources do they need, and then try to satisfy what requests are reasonable and what aren't. And that is sort of that kind of getting the soil ready for the following year with the ownership group is really more. And so it's like, make the best team that you can now, knowing that kind of the cavalry is arriving next offseason.
I think I might be a little bit more optimistic with the ability to get a couple of moves done. I know you mentioned if they could do a couple, then you view them in contention. Like, I think between the 2031 or 32 first, Dalton, Rui, Gabe, and Maxi Kleba, you could probably do 2 trades with some assortment of those. And, could you, like, a couple of names I've thrown out that I think are arguably the most realistic. There's like a Nick Claxton and an Andrew Wiggins. If you could, I think between those 5 assets, you could swing both. And if you swing both, I really like that starting group of those 2 next to Luka, LeBron, and Austin. I think it's going to be interesting because they kind of have to make a trade, if, in my opinion, if they're serious about next season, just because I don't think you're finding, like, maybe you get lucky and someone takes a discount, but really, if you look at the realistic targets in free agency, I don't see someone like moving the needle that much for that 5.7 taxpayer MLE. And as of right now, it's not looking like LeBron is willing to take a pay cut. They could salary dump someone, but you're going to have to attach an asset to that. So then maybe that's like your one at bat with a trade or with a pick or something. So I think realistically, it's going to have to be a trade. And if we go back over the last few summers, the last time they made a player related trade was August 2022 with the THT for Pat Bev trade. So they sat out 2023 in terms of trades. They sat out 2024. This has been a front office that has tended to prefer the perfect trade or the ideal trade over even like a good trade, and has waited closer to the February trade deadline. So I just pose that as like, to me, it's going to be an interesting thing to see if maybe that is where the new ownership kind of comes in and there's a little bit more urgency. Because you also have to remember, August 2nd, that is the big date of the summer for the Lakers. And we can sit here and maybe, like, if we're being pragmatic, maybe the best thing is to wait until next season. And this is a little bit of a gap year. And maybe it's impossible for them to build a roster that's on the level of like an OKC. It probably is. But you have that you have that franchise player that we talked about earlier in the show, that he's up for an extension. And I think if you're trying to sell him on Clint Capella as the primary offseason addition for $5.7 million, I don't know if like that's the best representation of your organization moving forward. So I think that's a looming factor over all this.
That's why I think where it lands is somewhere in between, is that it's one move, right? It's like, we've got this guy, and maybe it's Clint Capella for now, but we're looking to add at the trade deadline, right? But we've taken tangible steps between where we're at now to, even if it's not all of them that we need to take.
Yeah, I land in the middle somewhere, in that I do have real expectations because they have Luka. It's already an extremely unique situation with the Los Angeles Lakers being sold. That in and of itself, it makes this such a weird spot for everybody to be in. But then you add on top of that, normally when these teams get sold, it's at, again, some type of a low point, some kind of a lull point at the very least. In this case, the Lakers are being sold with Luka Doncic on the roster and with LeBron James still playing at an all-NBA level. And so the pressure is kind of sort of on as soon as the sale goes through. So I'm really fascinated to see how all of this is going to play out. And I think what comes of all of this summer, and whether, to what extent that is going to reflect capabilities for each of these positions to the new ownership group, I think that's going to tell the whole story of the Lakers for the next years, plural. So that's going to be fascinating to watch. All right, so that is going to do it for this first segment of the Great Western Forum. We're going to take a quick second. We're going to come back with a group of folks who I'm sure, are going to be excited to hear from. Hopefully it's Raj and Harrison and Mike. It has been like herding cats, getting everybody's schedules to work out together here in a good way, because it means we're all busy. But the plan is to throw to a segment with a nice broad forum here and continue that conversation from there.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, live from the Great Western Forum in Inglewood, California, it's exciting NBA basketball.
All right, welcome everybody here to segment 2 of the Great Western Forum. In this case, it is a forum. So we're living up to the name, at least in that regard. For this first edition of the Great Western Forum, we are joined by Mike Garcia. You know him as @CanyonDriver on Twitter. He is, for my money, the best Lakers Twitter draft person, and then certainly absolutely ranks up there as far as general draft people as well. So really excited to talk to him about some of the pickups that the Lakers made there. And then you guys who listen to the lounge frequently know Raj Chipalu down there in the bottom right as well. He is of Silver Screen and Roll as well, and Lakers Detailed. And Raj, I kind of wanted to start with you as we kind of segue from the first half of the conversation, in which Pete and Jovan and I talked about the sale and how we were met with the news and all that stuff. I think of the people here, you are known for being the most like cut you open and purple stuff spouts out, kind of person here. and it's that took a dark turn, but here we are.
Is that not what our blood is? Is it not purple? I thought that's what it is.
You got to throw some gold in there, right?
Yeah, I think that's
true.
a pretty serious
You're
medical
right.
condition, Raj, that you're dealing with there.
That's true.
But
Good point.
but I wanted to put ourselves, just like we did with Pete there at the onset of the conversation. How did the news of the sale, the Lakers sale, meet you?
Yeah, it was shocking to me. I thought, just for the majority of the time, all the time that I've been watching basketball, the Buss family have owned the Lakers, and I assumed that's what it would be for pretty much my lifetime. I just never thought there was a number that would take Jeannie Buss and the Buss family from the status that owning the Lakers gives you, right? As a person who goes to the games and sees her reacting with people, kind of how she introduces herself, owning the Lakers is her identity. So I just never saw that changing with a number. Now, I guess 10 billion does some things, that there's a price to everyone's, cost there. But yeah, I was shocked, but I'm excited. I know very little about the Dodgers, and I'm going to know much less about the ownership of the Dodgers, but everything that I've heard is exciting, and the money that they're bringing into the organization. But it was just pure shock to me that they sold at this time. I know there were some numbers in terms of what they had to get to for the votes to sell. But yeah, I thought Jeannie Buss would own the team for, the majority of my life until she, is not able to anymore. I thought the Buss family would own it. But yeah, very shocking to me, but exciting times. And I think you're already seeing a little bit of what they're able to kind of introduce in terms of the money and stuff. I know the draft picks that they bought today are, with the Buss family's money. But I think you're going to see some real entrance in terms of what they're able to do, what the new ownership is able to do. But shocking, absolute shock to me.
And then Mike, what I find really fascinating about this aspect of this conversation is that the one part of the franchise or the organization that I would say most Lakers fans would like to remain relatively untouched because of their track record is the scouting department, the guys who are responsible for finding Austin Reeves when he was an undrafted free agent, the guys who found Max Christie in the second round, and he just winds up being the exact player that the Lakers really, really miss right now. But this situation that we find ourselves in, they're coming off of another solid draft, right? Based off of your mock drafts that I've been paying attention to as well. We'll talk about Adou Thiero here in a second as well, but I want to start kind of more macro. What do you have those concerns? Are you hoping that that's something that the Lakers just kind of that Mark Walter and Guggenheim just kind of they supplement, but for the most part that soul remains intact?
Well, there's an aspect where Coach Redick is still a relatively new coach, and I think he's imprinting his identity on the roster. So whatever he's looking for in particular players, I think new ownership will definitely take that into account. At the same time, you can keep the same relative scouting staff and just expand upon it and just have more people searching out for other prospects, because this particular year, it just so happened that, hey, there was only maybe 100, 110 prospects. Usually the number of guys that declare it's 160. Sometimes it gets as high as almost 200 plus. And with the addition of the NIL contracts, it can actually make it easier in the sense of college players are going to stay longer. And so they're going to get a clearer picture of who these players are once they declare for the draft and once they get in. But by all means, when new ownership kicks in, it's also important for the rest of the front office to be all in line with what they foresee for the roster and create a winning team moving forward.
Yeah, I'm really excited about the transition and you know, this idea that there are, like, one of the things that I think even I am, and maybe I especially am guilty of, is allowing my frustrations with some of the marginal things to overshadow some of the real strengths of the organization, right? And you know, one of the, I think, very pervasive takes after the Lakers got Luka was, well, when you have shit like that fall in your lap, then you know, it just happened. But at some point, Pete, right, one of the back and forths you and I have had for years is stuff falling in their laps, or is that something that they have positioned themselves for, right? Where do you stand on the notion of, like, a situation like Luka or LeBron signing there in the first place, or Clutch potentially facilitating Anthony Davis making his way to the Lakers? Like, how do you kind of make that a tangible strength, or consider that a tangible strength that can be built upon?
I mean, they've been doing it since Kareem was asking to come here, or Wilt was asking to come here almost 60 years ago. That's why, like, the entire franchise has been calibrated around getting the superstars of the NBA. That's why the podcast art for my podcast is what it is. It's like, it could have been banners. It could have been, it's individuals, right? It's these singularly talented individuals that, like, the whole thing of the Lakers has been built around, like, hey, this is a place for you where you can come here, you can have a say, a seat at the table, you can be who you want to become, and help you have a different role here rather than the classic sort of. And when Dr. Buss bought the team in '79, the idea of a superstar being a co-partner of yours in any of way was unheard of, right, Mike?
Yeah.
You remember, like, the whole idea of, like, that you're at the table. Absolutely not. You work for me. That was the mentality back then. That's why whenever the people are like, I can't believe the Lakers got a superstar X, it's like, you just gesture generally at the last 60 years. How long does this have to happen until people get like, no, this is one of the things that the Lakers do well. It's what they're set up to do well. And obviously it's built alongside the advantages of LA and a big market and all of that. But that's smart to build around, because that's not true of every big market team. Not every big market team has found the ability to, like, wrangle that and turn it into actual superstars. But Lakers ending up with people like Luka, like, that's no accident.
Yeah, I've always hoped that you're right, and the track record is impossible to even try to swim against that tide. But it is kind of like this thing where, you know, the processes. I'm always kind of a slave to process, and the processes are always kind of they sign LeBron at a real low point of the franchise, and to your point, Pete, the reason, or one of the reasons that LeBron said that he was coming to the Lakers in the first place was because he wanted to partner with Magic Johnson in ways that stars didn't typically partner, even at that point in the player empowerment movement, that they weren't necessarily at that in that way. The question I kind of have to Jovan is, if this is indeed a strength, and like we talked about this in the first segment, and I just keep on going back to the balance that needs to be struck with these people who are coming in to an organization that just acquired Luka Doncic. It's not at any kind of a low point right now. They won a championship a few years ago. They were just in the Western Conference Finals a couple of years ago. Again, my own qualms or our qualms with some of the day-to-day stuff aside, it's still a really strong franchise that is going to get this injection of resources. And I think tonight is a perfect night to talk about that balance that needs to be struck between, yes, supplement in spots where the Lakers really, really need it, but also with something like the draft that has had this track record for years, plural, with Jesse and Joey Buss running the scouting department and the South Bay Lakers the way that they have. You know, how would you like to see that balance figured out between Guggenheim, who has the resources to just completely overhaul things if they wanted to, and actually using a little bit of tact, a little bit of strategy to injecting resources where absolutely need be?
Well, I think they should evaluate, as Pete had mentioned earlier, like meet with all the department heads and ask for what resources they need. And also, I think, enter this new era, this new partnership with something of a blank slate. And like, it's great that you were able to get Luka. It's great that you were able to get AD. It's great that you were able to draft this player. But like, we're about the next era, and we need to move forward with like, what are you going to do in the future? And so I do agree that I think the strength of this front office, the strength of the organization, outside of nailing the big things, LeBron and AD and Luka, has been finding value in late first round picks, early to mid second round picks. The scouting department has far more hits than misses over the past 10 to 12 years. And if you look at their drafting track record versus some of the people bring up like Toronto or San Antonio or Miami or some of the, like, they're right there with all those teams in terms of finding and extracting value in the draft or undrafted guys, the G League, whatever. So I think you could put them up against just about anybody. So I think it's more so to your point, Anthony, like you gotta, I think, hit some of the smaller stuff, some of the stuff around the margins that has been sometimes a blind spot for, I think, the front office and the organization. And if you can do those things, and I think planning ahead and kind of sticking with some of those things longer term, I think they'll be right there. And but I'm with you. It's like, I think it's going to take some time to figure it out. It's not going to be solved from day one, but I think they have a pretty good foundation to start with, I'll say.
This, I think, Mike, is one of the most, like, this is a draft result or a draft haul that has probably as much symmetry with your big board as any that I can really recall, like even extending into the undrafted free agents that they signed after the fact as well. So Mike, do you want to announce that you're the new head of the scouting? Like, what?
It started to beef up the department already, Mike. Congratulations.
You're Guggenheim's first hire. Congratulations.
Pete's known that this has been going on for a while, even dating back to like me tweeting about, if the Lakers needed ball handlers, there's Austin Reeves and Joel Ayayi, and then both guys got picked up, and I'm like, okay, wait a second, it'd be great if I hit one, but you telling me both. Now, granted, Joel didn't quite make the squad, but at least they gave him a shot. That's kind of all I really cared about. And now with, today was Adou Thiero, it's Eric Dixon and Augustus Marshalotis. Like, this is at least going to be a fun summer league team. I don't know what it looks like in terms of professional potential. I just know how I feel about Thiero and what I know about Dixon. I mean, Pete, I know you remember Sasha Vezenkov. There's a lot of similarity there. I think
lefty, let it fly.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, you would appreciate that. And he's got more post play. But that being said, now it's just going to be a fun team for the summer. And I mean, it's just one of those things to look forward to when the team actually picks up talent.
Yeah, let's talk about Thiero for a second, and we'll expand the conversation back out again. But I'm just so fascinated by this pick, and I think it's perfectly aligned with the stuff that we're talking about here, because I think you even tweeted about this, right, Mike? That if there was a player that you draft with the notion of future injection of resources into player development, into the medical team, into training, into conditioning, into those things, that this is the guy that you would take. And I'm looking at these highlights that I saw Darius tweet out, and I'm like, holy crap, this is an unbelievable. And I actually think, because the shooting is, I think, the biggest question facing him moving forward. I think the shooting can actually be really worked with as well. Let's build on that point of the idea of drafting somebody with the notion of future injection of resources into this dude's development.
So the thing with Thiero is, I know when looking at the shooting stats, it doesn't initially look great, but then you have to take it into context of where this person is in their own player development. And in Thiero's case, he grew from basically 5'8" to 6'6" now. He wasn't just a skinny kid all the way. He also built up strength on his way to the top. And now it's like, I mean, I mentioned this
like
kind of earlier. Yes, imagine you put on a super suit and then you're a foot taller and then you have double your strength and then you can jump like 40 inches. Well, how much it'll take you X amount of time. Right. Your
jumper's going to take some while in that case.
Exactly.
Take a little bit.
Hands.
My Achilles just ruptured thinking about Achilles just ruptured thinking about me jumping.
But the hands get bigger. Like, you got to learn your powers, and when you learn your powers, you can add the skill. And I'm thinking in my head, well, if he's at this point in his development and he's at this level of effectiveness, and he plays defense, and he has a motor, well, when the powers come along and he has that development team that helps him with the shooting, that might help with footwork or with ball, whatever else it might be. Now I just imagine this unlimited upside potential for a high motor player with outrageous athleticism, and it's just amazing.
Mike, one thing on his jumper that stood out to me is that, of course, the three-point shot is what we're talking about here, but we saw with TJ McConnell and with Indiana throughout this playoff run, the value of a good 11-footer over the top and having touch on that. And he's got actually some nice touch. He can finish with his left. Like, he can pull up and get 2 feet under him. And it's not just like, it's not a frozen rope at the rim. It's got some nice arc on it. Like, talk to me a little bit about his mid-range potential. Because again, he's scoring 15 a game while barely shooting threes at all.
Well, the thing that threw me off is when I looked at some footage of him just a few years ago when he was at Kentucky. He was considerably skinnier, probably 20, 30 pounds less. And they were just doing, like a white and blue scrimmage game within the Kentucky team against each other. And he was feet set, comfortable into his jump shot, kind of really upright. And then it was a lot more fluid. And the things that can interrupt a jump shot is obviously getting stronger. The body changes, you get taller. Well, now the mechanics have to change. And it just takes X amount of time for the player to actually adapt to that. But I figure, well, he was comfortable at this point. It was only just a couple of years ago. Imagine maybe a couple of years from now, maybe with the additional reps, and now we have this, okay, well, at least he's a spot-up 3-point shooter or spot-up 20-foot shooter, whatever else it might be. But he's comfortable and aggressive in getting into the shot. He's not timid about it, and that's what I like about projecting his success going forward.
Yeah, the thing that I'm really excited, Raj, about is the notion of motor and athleticism, and just get. I think J. Kyle Mann tweeted something to the extent of he would dive through sulfuric acid and still get a deflection. And we just watched the Indiana Pacers and the Oklahoma City Thunder fight, scratch, and claw to every inch that needed to be gained on that basketball court. And that was something that I thought the Lakers desperately needed was just high motor guys who can actually utilize that motor through natural athleticism. And that was the first thing that jumped to my mind was like, I think this guy in a few years could belong on that basketball court that we just watched in the finals.
Yeah, and I just want to say, I heard, Mike, you were talking about the excitement of the athleticism. Selfishly, at this time of the year, how well they play in summer league matters to me. That's like one of my favorite trips, of the year. I love going out there. So having an exciting summer league team is, up on my priorities. But no, this guy looks like a really, again, I'm so excited. I have a whole night to just go dive into, to this player that I learned about, a couple hours ago. But no, he looks like a super, awesome athlete. And to the point about motor, that's the point where I think the Lakers really missed that. And that's where I think Vanderbilt being unplayable really hurt them, right? As a guy that was supposed to help with motor, but just could not stay on the floor due to, his shooting struggles and all the fouls. And there's just an athletic floor that the Lakers did not reach, I feel like, against Minnesota, especially with the players that they played, benching Jackson Hayes, who was in their top of their rotation in terms of athletic profile. And so hopefully he can help next year. And obviously I can't speak to him, but just being on the ground in the G League and their development, seeing how much that's improved, the connection between their G League South Bay team and the parent team has absolutely taken a huge step. I look at a guy, not like, obviously Bronny is the one that gets the most fame, but I look at a guy like Jordan Goodwin, who when he came to when he came to South Bay, I asked him, what are you looking to improve on? He's like, I'm trying to improve my shot. And right away, I thought that improved as the games went on. And it went so far that he was part of JJ's 8-man rotation, so that's one of the success stories that I look at from the G League. And there's just a connection now between that development team to what they're expected on the parent team as well. And hopefully he's also part of that process and the other guys that they drafted today. But yeah, it looks like a really fun athlete. And again, that matters to me because that's the point of Summer League, going and enjoying the athletes on the team.
A lot of teams nowadays have this whole crew of guys that span from guards all the way up through forwards and bigs these are the guys that you're really relying on to defend and to pick up that slack. And so, Mike, I'm curious if you could help us understand a little bit more about who he is on the defensive end of the ball, because you can see the talent, but like, what exactly does he do?
Right now, he's just a defensive playmaker. And like I said, he's still growing to his body. So he's discovering his powers in terms of, hey, well, what can I get away with if I'm this level of athleticism and I have a 7-foot wingspan? Well, it turns out it's been a lot of transition block shots and a lot of transition block dunks and forcing turnovers on point of attack guys. And, it's not so much of the idea of him being kind of like a chaser, chasing a guard around screens or anything like that. That doesn't really seem like his thing. But I just imagine a defender going up against a power wing who might isolate in the post, put him on an island, and we're just looking for a defender that can compete, well, size-wise first, athletically second, and then maybe get a good contest. And I'm like, oh, well, Thiero is this guy. Can he be disciplined enough to just not get in foul trouble? Because he's still testing his own limits. And if he could do that and then learn that process kind of quickly, now you got a guy that can stay on the floor because he's really willing to get on in transition.
Jovan, what did you think of the way that the day played out? Because, obviously I think it's an easy point to make. People are like, oh, they sold the team. They finally used cash on these picks. It was like, they've actually done that relatively well over the last few years. Like they wouldn't have gotten Max Christie if not for buying a pick in the second round. But what did you think about, like, one of the knocks that I get more consistently about Rob Pelinka, from talking about to people around the league who have to negotiate with him and stuff is kind of a lack of creativity. I actually thought going from number 55 and making two transactions to jump up to 36 the way that they did was I wouldn't say out of the norm, but it was a pretty great set of maneuvers to get them into that spot.
I agree. And you see, like, there was a lot of activity today. Phoenix was an active participant in the second round. And so I think for some fans, I was already seeing it. I did episode earlier in the day, then I went live, and like people were a little bit antsy about what's going to happen. Are they going to move up? And so when they moved up, it was like, okay, they were targeting someone in the top 40 that they were waiting to see where he was going to slot, and then they were looking to purchase that pick. But to your point, like, I think it shows a level of creativity from Rob. I do think that this is more in line with how they've operated over the last few years. And like they are constantly sniffing around late first, early to mid second, like, and seeing who are their guys and if they can end up nabbing one of them. So I think that it was kind of in line with how they've typically operated. One interesting thing with him that, Mike was talking about it, and I looked up the scouting report from the Athletics, Sam Vecini, and he said that Thiero's a slight notch below the Thompson twins as an athlete, and like just kind of similar to them. And just thinking about like that type of player with the Lakers is, I mean, it's enticing.
It's those Thompson twins. They do stuff regularly on a basketball court. We're like, that's not.
Yeah. What?
Hold on.
Look, the Lakers turned 55 in money into the 13th ranked player on Mike Garcia's draft board that gets comparisons to the Thompson twins from Sam Vecini. I'll freaking take it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mike, another thing that I would imagine kind of hurts your soul a little bit is how few bites at the apple this scouting department sometimes gets, and where those bites at the apple sometimes come. And a lot of that has to do with asset management and allocation and letting assets, just kind of fall by the wayside or die on the vine. One of the things that I'm really excited about is this notion of, again, supplementing a strength and compounding a strength by way of Guggenheim resources, is that better management of draft picks that you use to get rid of bad deals that you signed or something like that. And thus potentially enhancing the productivity of this scouting department. Have you considered that? Like, I can only imagine the number of times that you're sitting there and you hear people say like, oh, you got to trade this player to get off of this contract. And you're like, no, I know who might be available there. That would suck.
I only get hurt, quote unquote, by the idea if I really love a particular player. The bottom line is I understand the team is trying to make these trades in order to succeed as soon as possible. Yep. That's what all of these trades are about. The only real gripes that I have is when they have a player in hand and then they let them go, and then knowing that they have a for example, it seems to happen every time with Memphis, and Memphis, like, you're aware of my draft list, but Memphis has a pretty good track record of getting my guys too. Well, what do? They get Scottie Pippen Jr. We could have used him. They get J. Huff. We could have used him. They most recently got Colin Castleton. I don't know what they're doing with his development, but they're still trying him out. And those are the kind of players that the current team needs now. Like, I would have liked to see a J. Huff on last year's roster going into next upcoming season. Yeah. And there was a relatively similar player in the draft with Ryan Kalkbrenner. Same general idea. Rim protector, has a three-point shot, a relative lob threat, more or less, but still a backup center. And those things would be very helpful for the current roster. But I can just imagine with the new ownership, they're going to be smarter or at least more decisive with future assets moving forward, and then projecting out a timeline that's more than just 1 or 2 years, more like 3, 4, 5 years out. And then that'll really just kind of avalanche all the fortune back onto the team.
We also had a bill to pay for the AD trade, Anthony. Like, we had, like, the Lakers made some moves to be able to make the best runs that they could. That's just part of the bill we had to pay.
No, I just want to say I just watched Alex Caruso be the third most important player on a finals team. Exactly. I think it's time to really evaluate. When we have a young guy who, like, I went to Southway games where Alex Caruso was playing. He was in our G League. To see the rise from him to there and let him go. Scottie Pippen Jr., another guy in our backyard. Jay Huff, another player in our backyard contributing on another team. So I think, to me, that was my whole issue with this department. Anthony, you started the show with how our scouting department is the best part of the franchise. To me, the hard part is what Mike does, which is finding those players, right? Mm-hmm. That's the difficult part. The difficult part is actually getting those guys in your organization. Keeping them actually isn't the hard part, and that's the place where we mess up, which is interesting. But hopefully they're able to learn from that and keep more of these young guys that play well going forward.
All right, I think we're just about wrapping up here. I'll just kind of go around the room here. Any kind of parting sentiments? I'll start with you, Pete. As we head off into the next stage of the offseason, Rob Pelinka saying how, this is now the phase where they can really start to address the center spot and other more immediate needs for the parent team. Any kind of parting thoughts or things that you're kind of watching for? As again, we've talked all show about the way that this sale might offer up the backdrop to what we might watch this offseason, this upcoming season, etc.
Really, I'm going to stay in the moment on tonight. I thought they had a really good draft night relative to the assets that they had. Again, the way that I laid it out with them having the 55th pick and ending up with a player like Thiero. I think that from a bigger picture standpoint, adding defensive assets over the next couple of years is something that is, when you do that for long enough and then you look back and you're like, oh crap, look at us. And now we've got a wolf pack next to Luka, and you're actually very close to an NBA championship at that point. You need more offense than that, of course, but I think that if we can get to a point where it's like Luka plus a really good defense, we'll be close enough to where we'll know whatever that last piece is that we need to add to that. And so building up to that point and just like making small marginal wins. We keep talking about winning on the margins and all that. What does that mean? It means a dozen different things, of which like turning 55 into a player that is your best athlete from day one, that has a lot of defensive talent, right? That just really adds to your transition game. A lot of these weaknesses, that's a good night. And so that's where my mind's at tonight. How about you, Jovan?
With you, I think like he doesn't really fit the profile of the types of guys that they've drafted recently, and I think that's a good thing in a sense, just because this is the type of player that they have sorely needed over the last few years. Like there's been this hole on the wing that they just have not been able to address, and I'm not saying he's not going to come in and start, and he might not even be a rotation player. Like odds are he's not going to be a rotation player next season. But I think looking at his development and the potential there, if he can continue to work on the shot, continue to work on his handle and his decision making offensively, and grow into his body more, I think this is a guy who can be a 3-and-D guy in a playoff rotation, and that is what you're looking for with a second round pick. Can that guy be a rotation player? And I think, again, looking at their needs, like they need someone like this, they need more guys like this. And so I think it's been less than 24 hours or so since the offseason officially started with the transaction cycle, and I think so far it's been a promising start.
Raj, where you at?
Yeah, no, I'm super excited, and it's funny because you have a lot of I still feel bad for the Mavericks people, but a lot of them I'm still mutuals with, and right when this draft pick happened, they went, man, that is the perfect player to fit next to Luka. You just surround Luka with athletes, and he's going to get you to a high enough. Yeah, he's going to get you to a high enough baseline, and going with that thought, I think there's just a level of accountability now that I think that goes throughout the organization. This happens obviously in any industry, but when a ownership change comes, there's an examination of the whole franchise. And I think when you have someone who's on the team for as long as they've had people in positions of power for decades, right? Multiple, you just things lose touch, people lose their focus. There's a level of detail that you no longer have. And that's something I really hope changes now with a fresh set of eyes on the situation. And hopefully tonight was the start of that. I'm so hyped to go into all these players that the Lakers got today and watch them and kind of learn about their games. But I think this is a really exciting start for the Lakers with a new ownership. And hopefully that just spreads throughout the organization where everybody is kind of on their toes and looking to put their best foot forward.
Mike, you've been floating this whole show, so I can't wait to hear this.
So, first of all, I just want to just kind of celebrate a really good draft day in general. I wasn't expecting any of this, especially with new ownership coming in. So it's like, the current ownership is still showing initiative to still try and improve the team. The fact that they made 2 steps to get to number 36 is kind of a big deal to me.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, it's, okay, now we've got these guys. Let's get them organized and ready for Vegas Pro League. The good news is you've got Adou Thiero, who's a high defensive Superman athlete. You have Eric Dixon, who's the Sasha Vezenkov, who's basically like a great, unusually good 3-point shooter who happens to be about 6'7", 260, and he could muscle guys in the paint.
Yeah, his arms look freaking photoshopped. Like his arms are
I just
obscene.
imagine pick and pop, and I'm like, I feel bad for the guy you just screened. He's going to pop over. Good luck. And then it's an open three every single time. And then on top of that, they got a point guard that can run the offense in Augustus Marshalotis. And I'll make some reference to his dad, where they move very similar in how they attack the basket. Augustus isn't quite the free throw drawer that his dad actually is, but he's definitely the better shooter. And he's really good driving with his left hand, just like his dad, but he shoots right-handed. I mean, you have a core core trio to kind of build around for Vegas Pro League. It should be very fun to watch.
I'll close this out by saying that one, I'm really excited about this project. As I said at the opening of it, this is something that I'm absolutely thrilled about. But two, to kind of connect that through line that we've been talking about all night, I identify the Lakers with exceptionalism. I identify the Lakers with striving to be the absolute best at everything. And that's what it takes to survive in this Lakers content sphere. And I'm talking to Mike, who is, again, one of the absolute best draft people, period. I'm talking to Raj and Pete, who grew through this industry as the best video crushers, period. Jovan, grew like crazy at the Athletic, and then I just made a couple funny mistakes over the course of my career. But like, what it takes to basically survive and thrive in this industry, covering this team, is competing with some of the absolute smartest and most creative people. And the idea that the Lakers are going to, I think, return to holding themselves to that type of level of Raj, you used the term of accountability. That's what I'm excited about. The idea that you're going to take the things that the Lakers are already really, really good at, attracting stars to, we talked about the scouting department over the course of the show, and then also inject it with some of the things that have made the Dodgers special in ways that I have watched as a Dodgers fan. That is really, really exciting. And that's kind of sort of the soul of what I'm hoping this project will eventually be, is really highlighting the brilliant voices that we get to listen to and interact with when we continue to be fans of this team. So Pete, Jovan, Mike, Raj, this has been an absolute blast. Thank you everybody for popping on and being open to getting the scheduling that we needed to make work to do this. To everybody who was listening, thank you everybody for tuning in. Subscribe to whatever channel you're watching or listening to this on, whether it's mine or Jovan's or wherever it appears. And until the next time we all get together, I'm not going to put this in the refrigerator because, it's been a good show and we're not competing against anybody. But have a great rest of your night, everybody.